I don't know why I keep doing this, because it upsets me so much, but every time I read through a long thread where someone has asked for advice because their dog or their cat has got a particular problem, and they're just given a whole load of well-meaning advice, people relay their experiences and their opinions on what the problem could be, or what the best thing that this person should be doing to optimize the health of their dog or cat, or to make them better, to improve their life. And unfortunately, most of it is just complete rubbish. And this may come across as, and it probably does come across as, really dismissive of people's opinions and people's experiences. But to be honest, my experience is equally useless if that's all it is, and it's based on the few cases that I've seen of a particular condition, and I know nothing about any research that's gone on to it, any controlled studies, any actual proper evidence. You know, I can think of examples of how we used to treat different cases when I first graduated as a veterinarian, where now we just simply don't use those treatment options at all. We now know better. We now know they are useless. But if I was relying just on my personal opinion and my experience, I would still be giving those treatments to my patients incorrectly. Examples of this would be feline idiopathic cystitis. So cystitis in cats, we used to give those antibiotics regularly. We now know that they're not needed. Infection is really, really uncommon. Normally it's a stress-related problem. Similarly, kennel cough in dogs. We used to give antibiotics incredibly regularly. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure the last time I gave antibiotics to a dog with kennel cough. And if you want a really extreme example from history about when people's experience and people's opinion and doctors' opinion was the overriding way that we determined what the best practice was, it used to be that people would be bled if they were unwell. Some of them got better, and that's what people would have clung to, the fact that this was useless. But how many conditions do we actually get bled at the doctor's surgery now? Not very many. So how does this relate to what you could be reading on Facebook or some other social platforms, some internet forum out there? Well, let's just have a little think. If, for example, we have 100 dogs, we have a population of 100 dogs, and normally we would expect maybe 5 to get diarrhea within a month period. Now, those are made up numbers. I don't know what they are, but say for argument's sake, we would expect 5 to get diarrhea. What would happen then if we gave 100 separate dogs a new supplement, or we started them on a particular medication? It could be that if one of them was your dog and they got diarrhea in the kind of days, weeks, or within that month's period, you could assume that that treatment, that intervention, whatever change it was that you'd made in their diet, for example, had caused their diarrhea. What we know, though, is that 5 out of every 100 dogs would be expected to get diarrhea. So we can't necessarily say that that particular intervention caused that dog's diarrhea. And that's a very simple example. If we think of seizures and epilepsy, epilepsy affects about 0.75% of the dog population. So how do we know if we give a dog a medication and they have a seizure at some point after starting it? How do we know that that medication caused that seizure? Or can we just write it off as actually that's normal, that's to be expected, because just under 1% of dogs will go on to develop seizures in their life. Similarly, cancers, about 50% of dogs over the age of 10 will develop cancer. So if we're then dealing with the treatment of a condition that affects older dogs, unfortunately, half of those dogs are going to get cancer anyway. So it would be incorrect, or potentially incorrect, for someone to say, well, I started this intervention and a month, 2 months, 3 months later, they developed cancer. And therefore, this treatment, this medication caused my dog's cancer. But unfortunately, these, really tragic stories of these dogs and cats who suffered some significant health challenges will scare people off, and understandably it will scare people off from giving a perfectly legitimate treatment to their pet. We've moved on from this experience base as our evidence base, if you like, and that's from an individual's experience, but also from an expert's experience. If we're relying on experience and nothing but that, then unfortunately it is pretty useless. We've got a whole hierarchy of evidence that we use, and at the very bottom, the very lowest of the low, is an individual's experience and even expert opinion. As we move up this pyramid of evidence, we can become much more certain that what we think actually is the real situation. Ideally, we would have what we'd call placebo double-blinded trials. So we'd have two populations of dogs or cats. One would get treatment, one would get a placebo, so a sugar pill, and you'd be able to compare the difference between two groups. So if we think of our 100 dogs, we would have 100 dogs who got the new treatment that we were trialing, and we would get 100 dogs who had a sugar pill. Now, if those 100 dogs that had the sugar pill, maybe 5 of them would get diarrhea. If the new treatment, maybe 6 would get diarrhea. We then use statistics to see, is that a significant difference, or is that actually just by chance? Because, okay, in 1 month 5 will get diarrhea, but maybe it goes to 6 or 7 on some months, maybe it's 2 or 3 in other months. Having said that, if 20 got diarrhea compared to that 5, the statistical evidence would say that that is a significant difference, and actually that is the medication that is causing that problem. So it's really important that we rely on the evidence that is available. Now, unfortunately, a lot of treatments that we give, a lot of interventions that we recommend in veterinary medicine, we don't have that gold standard double-blind placebo trial. It's difficult, it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time, and we don't have big sample numbers. If you look at human medical interventions, often you're talking of thousands and thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of people in these trials. With our pets, it doesn't go much more than 3 digits. So you're often talking about tens, hundreds at most. And this isn't to write off completely people's experiences, because it is actually important that we collimate, we collect all of these reports to provide the basis of what we should be researching, what we should be looking into, to see if that really is a real effect that we should be concerned about, or actually if it is nothing but chance and happenstance. And as well as being careful about relying on other people's opinions, you also need to know how your own mind can trick you into thinking an intervention is working and making your pet better, whereas in actual fact it's doing nothing but wasting your money and delaying your pet's proper treatment. You can find out more in the video linked on screen. I've also got a guide that you can download, and I'll leave the link to that in the description down below. But until the next video, I'm veterinarian Dr. Alex. This is Our Pets Health, because they're family.